Hello besties, welcome to my 2024 July bullet journal setup. I am super excited about this video and to set up my bujo for a new month with you guys. And as you already know, I always go extra with my themes, and so we have quite a piece of artwork to do for the cover page, and let's just get right into it. So you can already tell by the sketch here, my theme for July is Mermaid Grotto. So I have a lovely little palace here. It almost looks like a Roman Colosseum with like the open airways and lots of arches. And then at the bottom there are multiple pools of water with two mermaids sitting and or like bathing on either side. This was an idea that I was kind of tentatively thinking about for the past couple of weeks, but I didn't know how I wanted to execute it exactly because I knew I was going to do something huge artwork wise. I am sketching this separately from my bullet journal and I'm going to be using alcohol markers as per usual, but then I'll just cut it out and put it in my journal. I usually do that on just one spread, so it's only a vertical piece of artwork, but this time I decided to just go all out and do a horizontal piece of artwork. Now, as you can see, the sketch is only a little bit at the bottom of the left side, and that's because when I put it into my actual bullet journal, it'll like work around the calendar. You guys will see that in just a few minutes, don't worry, but it still is a much bigger art piece than I am usually used to working with, so this will take me quite a few minutes to complete, and in real life it took me like an hour and a half, 2 hours, but the finished product I think is super cute, so I can't wait to show it with you guys. And I also want to kind of talk through my process and make this more of a tutorial video so that you guys can do something similar and replicate it at home if you want. So this is the inspiration picture that I used. I'll put it here on the left. I found it on Pinterest. This is probably an AI generated image, but it had a really cool landscaping and architecture that I really liked, and I've been practicing recently with drawing more architecture and trying to get better at it. If you guys watched my 2024 new bullet journal setup, you would have seen that I drew a princess and a castle, and then I drew another castle image facing from the other direction, so I'm trying to get better at architecture, and this is no different. I also added mermaids in this picture. They weren't originally in the image, and also as I'm doing this, I am like actually editing the pencil sketch itself while I'm filming. I realized that there were a couple things that I just didn't finish whenever I was sketching the original drawing. It just didn't look right, and so before I actually went in and permanently inked things, I wanted to make sure the sketch was perfect. So throughout the video you will see me pull out my pencil and eraser and do some adjusting. In this case, there were stairs that led down into the first of the two pools, but I felt like they were too curved while everything else was rather flat. It could have been more curved if I only had the drawing on the right side of the spread, but because the drawing extends to the second side of the spread on the left, the bottom curve is much flatter, so I didn't want the top curve to look out of place, so I just decided to make it more flat. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but you guys saw me erasing it. I just basically took away the stairs completely and made it so that the pool was level with the ground floor of the palace. Oh, also as I'm sketching, my head pops in a lot. That is so normal for me. I feel like I always have my head pop into these videos, but yeah, the line art is mostly done. I'm just using a black fine liner in the size 01 to make sure I get all these little fine details. As far as the like bushes and florals go, I really did very simple sketches. It's just like little circles for the flowers themselves and then little like pointy leaf shapes like you draw in kindergarten. Since they're so small, it didn't have to be perfect, but it is just the quantity of these leaves and flowers that make it look like a bush, and when I go in and add the color later, it'll really fill out the space. So I get that it looks kind of crazy right now, all these little scribbles, but it is messy on purpose, and like I said, later it will make a little bit more sense. And then the last thing I'm inking here is just the circles that are going on top of the water. This is basically just the reflection of light from the sun. And with that, let's get on to coloring. So for coloring, I'm going to be pulling out my Ohuhu alcohol markers. As you guys know, this is one of my absolute favorite brands of markers, and they're actually very kindly sponsoring this video, so thank you to Ohuhu for sponsoring. I've been using Ohuhu markers for actual years, and they're just such a high quality and reasonably priced alcohol marker brand. I really do love their stationery. They sent me their pastel marker set to use for this video, which I was super excited about because not only was swatching it incredibly satisfying, but also the color range is super pretty and incredibly lighter. lighter than the normal alcohol marker sets. So if you want a lighter effect with your alcohol markers, this pastel set is something I don't see very often, but is very much appreciated. They also sent me their bamboo marker organizer that I also did a TikTok for, and this was just super cute on my desk. I got to rainbow organize all of the markers, and it fits about 7 markers in each row perfectly, so you can fit quite a lot in here. Great for storage, and it also looks adorable on top of your desk. My personal favorite of their markers are the Honolulu line, which is a chisel tip and brush nib, but they also have multiple variations of chisel, brush, fine, and wide tip markers. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be using the pastel set to color in the artwork in this bullet journal setup so you can see the markers in action. But if you want to get any of Ohuhu stationery for yourself, whether it's the markers, the bamboo organizer, or their sketchbooks, fine liners, anything else, I will have a link in the description box below, and you can use my code MingoStudio for 10% off your order. Thank you so much, Ohuhu, for sponsoring, and let's get back to the coloring process. Alright, so like I said, I wanted to make this kind of a tutorial so you guys can do something similar in your own bullet journals if you would like to. Since this is an inspiration picture that I took off the internet, I can't sell this as a digital download or print, but I do want to make sure you guys can do something similar in your own bullet journals. So just to start out, I want to start with a very simple color first, and that is a light pinky beige for the buildings. Now, I always do a very light layer with alcohol markers before I do anything else, and then I'll go and add shadows later. Before I film, I do go test all of my alcohol markers, swatch them, and practice blending with them so I can see if the different colors blend together well and if the shades look good together. So that is always done off camera, but before you do any artwork, I always recommend trying and swatching your markers first just to see if they work well together. Anyway, so I did the light beige for the building and the ground, which is basically just like this light cement, and then I'm using a light gray, which is actually more of a warm toned gray, for these rocks that are dispersed around the landscaping. Now, I actually did a lot of shading on the gray before I did anything else. Just to kind of explain, I do one light layer of the base color, and then I usually have 2, possibly 3, but usually just 2 layers of shadow on top. So one for like a mid-tone for blending, and then one for the deepest, darkest shadows. I don't have a very specific light source that is actually drawn in this sketch, but I just assumed that the sun was high above these buildings here. So if the sun is coming down from above, like directly above, most of the shadows are basically just going to be at the bottom edges of the markers and also at the corners, or when something overlaps it. Like for example, when the mermaid sits on the rock, there of course is going to be a shadow under her body, so I made sure to make darker edges there. So as far as the water goes, this went by pretty quickly, but I did 3 layers again. So one light layer of the lightest blue just to color in basically the middle parts of the pools, because the shadows are going to be where the edges are, and then I go in with a mid-tone, add the middle parts, and then the deepest, darkest shadows on the edges. And I'll actually go in later and add more shadowing eventually, because I find that alcohol markers sometimes dry slightly lighter than they are originally put down. Not as drastic as watercolor, but sometimes that happens where it doesn't happen with water-based markers. So I make sure to wait a little bit and then come back for a second layer later. Like I said, these circles in the middle of the pool are basically where the light is hitting it, which is why that's where it has the lightest color. And I have to say, if I didn't have this pastel set of markers that Ohuhu sent me, I would not be able to get this light of a tone, because I don't have these light of colors in the normal sets. They are always so much darker. So I was really excited to receive this set from Ohuhu because I could get so much lighter pastel colors than I can with the normal set. It still would have looked good, but it just would have been a little darker, and I much preferred this very light feel for a summery theme. Okay, so as far as the foliage goes, I had basically just pink flowers and green leaves. It's relatively simple. So I started off with the pink, I'm pretty sure, and I used a very light pink just to color very simple blobs for all the little flowers. Like I said earlier, they are really too small to add lots of detail to them, so it's pretty simplified, but it's just little pink circles, and then I add a hot pink layer around the bottom edges as if a shadow is there. But again, it's too small to add lots of detail. Then for the greenery, I used 3 different shades of green. So again, starting with the lightest color and then adding shadows and building more as they go along. Shadows are usually at the bottom of each bush, or if a rock is covering something, that's even more shadowed. And I also try to add a little bit of 3D texture, especially on the right side where that tall wall of bushes are, because technically there is depth there, so it's supposed to be like bushes are going off into the distance rather than going straight upwards. So the ones farther away from the camera and closer to the building are supposed to be darker than the ones close up. I don't know if it was really achieved as well, but that was my intention. As far as the mermaids go, they are pretty simple. I didn't add much like detail or shadowing here. They really don't even have faces. They're just faceless creatures. I guess that sounds so awful, but I didn't want to put too much detail there. They're not really the focus here. The focus is the grotto itself. And then as far as the building, I just made sure that the poles in the back were the darker brown and the poles in the front were the lightest brown. And there's also some shadowing on the right, because if the sun's in the middle, then the right side of the buildings would get a little more shadow. They do have this stone texture, which is basically just scribbles of my pen on the front to add a little bit of texture, but I didn't add any shadowing here. It's really just the pen line itself adding that stone effect. And then finally, I'm just using a white gel pen to add some highlights to basically everything, all the flowers, the sparkles on the mermaid's tails, all of that. And yeah, that's it. That's pretty much done. So hopefully that tutorial was helpful. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and I would love to answer them. Okay, so now I'm actually cutting out this piece, and what you might notice, I didn't mention this before, but this is actually drawn on normal paper and not sticker paper. Now, I am a believer in using sticker paper. I love to use alcohol markers on sticker paper because it's super easy to just peel off the back and stick it right into your journal without worrying about alcohol markers bleeding through anything. I've talked about this a million times before on my channel, and I will continue to do so, but I've gotten some comments recently discussing the issue of like the alcohol markers being so saturated that they bleed onto other spreads when the front of the artwork is uncovered, not the back. And so people have recommended me draw on something that's not sticker paper because sticker paper is very, very smooth. So it's great for blending, but it's not great for holding ink. So I decided to try a little experiment this month and try something different. So I'm actually drawing everything on normal sketchbook paper. This is mixed media paper, and it's not super thick. It's like 120 GSM, but it doesn't matter because again, I'm just gluing it in, or in this case, using double-sided tape to paste it in since I don't have a sticker paper edge. My hope is that the textured paper and the style of paper that was technically originally made for alcohol markers and other mixed media will hold the ink a little more and won't cause the ink to make yellowing on the other side of the page when the journal is closed. So I will update you guys in a couple weeks and let you know if this is a solution. I was worried about doing this in the past because it is thicker paper, and so I was thinking that the sticker paper, which is incredibly thin, would be better since it won't bulk up the journal as much, but I don't mind it being bulky for something like this. So we're doing a little experiment. We're going to try it, and like I said, I'll update you guys in a little bit to see how it helps. Okay, so you may be wondering, what the heck am I doing here? So I did have to cut the side of my artwork when I pasted it in, and that is because I actually drew this separate piece of artwork completely off camera the night before. So this is basically a replica of the first page, almost to the T on the right side. I actually held it up to a light and traced the sketch so that it was a perfect match to the first page. However, I did extend the sketch to the left a little bit and made it a little different. So rather than having two pools with the two mermaids, this one is much shorter with just one pool. But the right side of the image completely lines up with where the left side of the image on the cover page is. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm talking in circles, but you guys can see what I'm doing here. So I basically just cut off a little, like basically half an inch, almost an inch off of my original drawing for the Dutch door. And then I put the second drawing on the back page of the Dutch door so that when it's closed, it overlaps and the line is pretty continuous. In fact, the drawing looks like it's still one drawing, but then you can flip open the pages, and when you get to the last spread, there is still art on the last spread. In my opinion, it's so hard in these voiceovers to verbally explain what I'm doing when I make Dutch doors. It's just hard to demonstrate, but you guys can definitely see on camera what I'm doing. And again, any questions, drop below and I will answer them. But coming back to the front page, just to finish things off, I'm adding the calendar on the left here, and this is why I made the artwork really short on the bottom left, because I know I was going to have a calendar filling up the rest of this spread. So this I'm just drawing directly into my journal, not on separate paper. So all the coloring I'm using is actually using water-based markers instead of alcohol-based markers, since these do not bleed through the journal paper like alcohol markers would. It's a relatively simple calendar. I didn't even have like the days of the week at the top, because at this point I know that I always start my calendars on a Monday, so it's pretty simple. I just have the 7 days of the week, the 5 rows, and then I'm going to be doing little dots on the top of each box for each day of the week. And then the bottom couple of days that are in August, I'm just going to color in with a tan grid to kind of just fill up that space that I'm not going to be using. So the colors here basically in this theme are brown, pink, green, and blue, as you can see. So I wanted to do my best to find water-based colors that match the alcohol-based markers, and luckily I found some pretty good matches. So these are the colors that I'm going to be using to decorate the rest of the spread that is not using alcohol-based markers. And also, like I said earlier, I'm doing a lot of editing as I film this video. So as far as the title for the cover page that says July, I actually sketched it out with pencil while filming and went back and forth on the placement and where I wanted it to go. But finally I decided on this location, and I used a Tombow Fudenosuke hard-tipped brush pen to write July, and then I used my fine liner to write 2024 under it. I was debating putting a calendar under it, but it just didn't seem like there was enough space, so just filled it with a few more bubbles just to fill up that last little bit, make sure there's no negative space not being used, and that's basically the cover page done. It only took us, what, 15 minutes to get here, but I think it does look really, really good. Kind of proud of myself, not gonna lie, and I'm glad I could redeem myself from last week's video because that was kind of a train wreck. If you guys watched it, you know I had a lot of trouble with the artwork in that video, and I'm glad that this one is kind of like a second chance for me. Coming on to the next spread, this is like the middle of the Dutch door, and so there's not really any art on this spread because you can kind of see the edges of the art from the other 2 spreads peeking out on either side. But I did want to do this little technique of adding a seashell to the bottoms of my big drawings. This was a thing that I added to the calendar, although it was kind of hard to see on the right side of the calendar, but you can definitely see it here on the goals section on the left and then the expenses tracker on the right. I have these very, very simple seashell drawings. It's basically just triangles, like 1 triangle on the bottom and then 5 really tall ones facing the other way on top to make this decoration, and then the 3 dots going upwards that are getting smaller as they go up. I don't know, it's just a little detail that I liked to add something else to the spread. And then I added the bubbles everywhere. This is basically my replacement for sparkles. If you guys have watched me and have been subscribed for a while, you know I always add sparkles everywhere in my spreads to fill up any negative space, but for a theme like this that's kind of water-based, I replace the sparkles with bubbles and then just color them with the light blue, and it's on theme, but it also does the same thing of basically just filling up all the negative space. As far as the trackers go, like I said, there's a goals section, an expenses tracker, and then I have 6 habit trackers. They're all the same as my usual ones. I don't change my habit trackers very much, and in fact, during the month of June, I barely even kept up with my trackers. I feel like there's like a 2 or 3 week gap in the middle of my trackers. In the summer, I just don't need my bullet journal as much, especially this summer when I'm not doing anything crazy. I have a very, very chill schedule going on right now besides making content, and so I didn't need anything super intense, but if I use a spread or if I don't, it really doesn't matter. It still looks cute and it's good inspiration for you guys. Since this is the July Bujo setup and we're smack dab in the middle of the year, I thought I would do a quick little life update to finish out this video. Not really much to update. Like I said, my summer is going really, really chill, and I haven't officially gone through my goals and done a goals update. I'm not gonna make a video for it, but I'm gonna do it on my own, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. I'll do it closer to the end of the month because right now it's still a couple days before June ends. That being said, it was my birthday a week ago, so I turned 18 and that was super fun. And one big gift that I got for my birthday was actually a record player, which is something I've been thinking about wanting for a while, but I kind of thought it would be a waste of money because, you know, I have Spotify. Like, you can listen to any song you want on the internet. It really doesn't make sense to buy a record player and then buy lots of records and spend lots of money for something you can literally find online. But for the sake of aesthetics and vintagey and just being a really cute gift, my parents got it for me and a couple records. I got Harry's House by Harry Styles, and then I also got Sunburn by Dominic Fike, which Dominic Fike is my favorite artist right now. I'm obsessed with him, so I was super grateful to get that little gift and I'm super happy about it. And yeah, that was like the big development that happened last month, so hopefully July is just gonna be really chill and fun, and I'm hoping you guys also have an amazing month and an amazing rest of your summer. So with that being said, this is basically the end of the video. Oh my goodness, such a fun one, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment down below what your July bullet journal theme is, and as always, subscribe to my channel because I post bullet journaling videos every single Saturday. Next week should be my bullet journal flip through, which will be super fun, so make sure you subscribe, stick around for that. And if it's live, I will link it right here on the screen. Love you guys so much and have an amazing rest of your day. Goodbye.